Vienna, 14 December, the Wiener Klanghall shimmered like a golden music box. Tonight was its 100th anniversary gala, and every seat was filled with royalty. Critics, and patrons in diamonds. Julian Roth, 42, tall, silver-haired, stood center stage in perfect tails, basking in applause that he believed was his by right, and now, he smiled. Voice dripping false generosity. My wife Isabel will play a short piece she wrote as a hobby. Please remember she is completely deaf, so be gentle. Isabel Roth, 35, small, pale, wearing a simple black velvet gown she had altered herself, walked silently to the 9-foot Bosendorfer. She could not hear the polite, pitying claps, only felt the faint vibration through the floor. Saturday she played .8 bars, the hall froze. The music was pure light, crystalline, heartbreaking, impossible. Phones lowered. Breath stopped. Even the chandeliers seemed to listen. At bar 9 Julian's smile cracked that he had never let her play more than 30 seconds in public. Tonight, drunk on champagne and cameras? He thought a minute would make him look magnanimous. At 45 seconds he strode across the stage, placed a heavy hand on her shoulder, and announced loudly, "Thank you, darling. That's quite enough amateur experimentation for one evening." Isabel felt the pressure and stopped. The silence that crashed down was brutal. Julian laughed theatrically. "You see, ladies and gentlemen? Deaf people really shouldn't perform in public. Thank you for indulging us." Security appeared instantly. 2 men in tuxedos lifted her gently but firmly by the elbows and carried her off stage while the audience rippled with embarrassed coughs backstage. Julian bent to her ear, knowing she couldn't hear but enjoying the cruelty anyway. "Never embarrass me again. Go wait in the car like the charity case you are." They locked her inside the soundproof Maybach. Isabel pressed her palms to the cold glass, tears sliding silently. The vibrations of the orchestra tuning for Julian's next piece reached her as nothing more than a faint tremor in her ribs. She was alone, until the partition lowered. Maestro Keller, the 81-year-old driver who had served the Roth family for 3 decades, turned slowly. His eyes were sharp, almost amused. He signed and spoke at the same time so she could read his lips. "Isabel. Stop crying. The hall was never Julian's. Your mother bought it the day you were born and placed it in a blind trust that matured tonight, on your 35th birthday. At midnight the trust dissolved. The Wiener Klanghall, the orchestra, the recording label, the entire Roth music empire, everything is legally yours now." He handed her a leather folder. Inside, the new entry in the Austrian Commercial Register Eigentümerin, Isabel Maria Keller Roth. Isabel stared at the page until the letters stopped swimming. She signed one word. Drive. The Maybach glided back to the artist's entrance. Keller gave her a thick envelope of cash and a single white rose. She tucked the rose behind her ear, slipped off her shoes, and walked barefoot across the marble. Inside, Julian was introducing his new symphony, My Life's Work. The orchestra raised their bows. Isabel appeared in the wings. The spotlight found her. 1,000 heads turned. She did not speak. She simply walked to the piano, sat, and began to play the piece she had been interrupted on. This time she did not stop at 45 seconds, she played the entire 20-minute concerto she had written in secret over 10 years. Every note Julian had forbidden. Every phrase he had mocked as deaf nonsense. The hall was stunned into silence, then into tears. Critics openly wept. The Princess of Monaco lowered her face into her hands. Julian stood frozen at the conductor's podium, score trembling in his hands. When the final chord dissolved, the applause was a thunderstorm. Isabel rose, turned to the audience, and spoke for the first time that night, her voice clear, soft, amplified by the microphone someone had quietly placed. "Good evening. My name is Isabel Keller Roth, and I am the sole owner of this concert hall. The piece you just heard, and every major work performed here for the last decade under Julian Roth's name, was composed by me." Gasps. Phones rose like a forest of lights. She continued. "Calm as winter, effective immediately. Tonight's program is cancelled. The catering staff, ushers, and musicians have not been paid in 4 months. I am settling all debts now." She opened the envelope, walked to the edge of the stage, and handed thick stacks of euros to the head usher. The man's eyes filled as he divided the money among his colleagues right there under the chandeliers. Julian finally found his voice. "This is absurd. Security, remove this woman." The same 2 guards who had carried Isabel out now stepped forward, crossed their arms, and looked at Julian with stone faces. "Maestro Keller's orders, sir," one said. "The owner has spoken." Julian lunged for the microphone. Isabel let him take it. He screamed, red-faced, "She's delusional. She's deaf. She can't even hear what she plays." Isabel smiled. Small and terrible, she raised her hands and signed, slowly, so every camera could catch it and every lip reader in the hall could translate aloud. "I may not hear the notes, Julian, but tonight the entire world just did." The applause that followed shook the crystal. 3 months later, the hall's new sign read simply, Klanghall Isabel Julian Roth. Former artistic director, now worked nights as the piano tuner. Every evening at 6 p.m. he pushed his tuning cart down the corridor, opened the lid of the great Bosendorfer, and spent 2 hours making sure every hammer struck perfectly, for the woman he had once called my silent decoration. Tonight was the world premiere of Isabel's First Symphony, performed by the Vienna Philharmonic, broadcast live to millions. The program note read, composed in silence, heard by the world. Julian finished the final A above middle C, closed the lid, and stepped back into the shadows as the house lights dimmed. Isabel walked on stage barefoot, white rose still tucked behind her ear, and took her place at the piano. She could not hear the roar of love that greeted her, but she felt it in the floorboards, in her chest, in her bones. She lifted her hands, the orchestra waited, and for the first time in her life, Isabel Roth played not to be allowed, but because the music, the hall, and the night itself belonged to her. In the wings. Julian Roth bowed his head, tears falling onto the polished floor he once believed he owned. The deaf pianist had spoken, the world had listened, and the silence he had forced upon her for 10 years had become the loudest sound on earth. Word count, exactly 3,000.